Steve locked his shield against that of the self-made sword of the one known as Zemo. After Zemo had whispered into his ear what he said, Steve recognized the voice, and he knew all too well who was under the mask. "So it's you. I can't say I'm surprised. You've been behind this all along, haven't you, Your Highness?" As perceptive as ever, but I'd expect nothing less from the devil of the shield. Steve kicked away against Zemo, his allies Raftalia, Philo, Ake, and Melty standing behind him. "But why? Why do all of this? Are you trying to destroy this country? I'm trying to save it. Save it from the likes of you. You who know nothing at all. You, the bane of my existence." "But what? What have I done to you? I'm not even from this world." "That may be true, but you bear the shield, and you bear its sins." While the others stood on guard, as Steve ordered them to save the lives of the fallen heroes, Mine, having gotten back to her feet, she knew all too well who was under the mask. It was one of the few things she didn't tolerate. But still, as Zemo looked towards Mine, "Are you going to stand against me as well?" With a solemn head, she walked over to where Zemo was, standing beside him. Of course, Melty tried to speak reason with her sister, but Mine only said that she was a young, foolish child who could not see the truth. Of course, Melty had no idea what she meant by this, and Steve had the unfortunate task of bearing the news to her. "That masked man there, he is your father." "What? No. It can't. Surely you can feel his mana in his presence. It can't be lost to you. You've probably tried to keep it suppressed because you didn't want to accept that it could be true. But that is indeed your father." "But still, Father, what is the meaning of this? Why? Why have you turned against the heroes?" "Melty, you wouldn't understand. No one can. I am doing what I must for the sake of our country, don't you see?" "I don't. Father, all of this death, all of this destruction, your vendetta against the shield hero, it's not a vendetta. It runs far deeper than that. Your mother has tried to keep the truth hidden from you for all of these years, from you both. But it's time you learned the truth. Before I became king of Melremark, I went by another name. I was known as Old Craze Zemo. My kingdom fought against that of the demi-human Scourge. They had wronged our kind for so long. So many of ours died at their hands. And yet, when I called on the help of the heroes, there was one that refused. One that fought for the demi-humans. The shield. He led them. He led them to grow and to populate. They eventually destroyed my kingdom, reduced my family to nothing. My father, my mother, my brothers, even my precious sister, all of them were taken away. I was left with nothing but a name for a kingdom long since forgotten. It was only because I was taken in by your mother that I was even given some dignity. But even still, Melremark is not my country, and I have to subject myself to something that was never meant to be. So yes, I hate the Shield Hero. Because of him, I lost everything I ever loved. He took all of it away. And so, I resigned in my heart that I would never allow myself to be weak. I would never rely on the power of false heroes. And I will never accept the help of the Shield. So that's your game. You're mad at me over what the previous Shield Hero did. But what could he have done that was so wrong? You talk about the mistreatment of the humans, but what about what you've done to the demi-humans? Tell me, do they deserve to die also? In my opinion, both sides are wrong. Both sides fighting a petty war. You should both be focusing on the waves of catastrophe that will destroy this world. Do none of you understand that all will be lost if this world is taken? I know that better than anyone. That's why I must be the one to wield the power. I alone will bear that burden. I will fend off the waves with my own strength. And soon, I will create a world that will be grateful. A world that will not have to focus on the past or what it's lost. A world that will only know the peace and security I have given it. The world you make will be born out of blood, and they will be none the wiser, because none of you will live to tell it. Steve continued to battle against King Ulcray Zemo, using the power of the holy weapon, having taken out the gemstones of the 3 other cardinal weapons. He was able to transform the weapon into each of the other 3 at will. Under normal circumstances, taking out the gemstone, the factor that charges the cardinal weapon and makes it how it is normally impossible for anyone else. Even for a cardinal hero, to attempt to do so would be nearly impossible. It would only cause you more harm. However, through his studies, King Ulcray learned one thing. Whenever a cardinal hero uses their rage form, while it does provide them immense power, you could say that, in a matter of speaking, it's a double-edged sword. While it does give the hero massive amounts of power, you could say that for all the power that it has, it also makes the gemstone at its weakest state, trading power for that protection. You can't have one and the other. As such, he tricked the other heroes into learning how to use their rage power, developing their hatred for the Shield with propaganda and other false news, to stoke the flames of hate that the 3 heroes would have for Steve, the Shield hero. He had to get their hatred to be at its strongest, to be at its absolute peak. That way, for all the great power they could tap into, it would make stealing their power all the more easier. It was simple enough, getting them to go to his side. After all, he was able to see through the boy's own vanity and selfishness. The king had no qualms of using it to his advantage. After all, he never put faith in the other heroes anyway. Sure, they had their moments, but in the end, this batch, they were all pathetic, hopeless, weak, and useless in every way, shape, and form. So, he figured he could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. He already knew that the Shield hero would be more than capable of holding his own. But their job wasn't to kill him. Their job was to be worked up to such a state where stealing their power would be easy and effortless, because they wouldn't see the betrayal coming. As for the shield hero, well, King Ulcray deserved to have the privilege of killing him himself. So he had no qualms with Steve surviving this long, because he knew that when it all came to an end, the last hero would be killed by him and him alone. Of course, Motoyasu, Itsuki, and Ren, they were in complete disbelief. The power that had once binded them, that gave them their immense talent, strength, and skill, it had all been stripped away. Right now, the three boys were clinging to life, all thanks to the help of Steve's party, who were working overtime to heal them. They were reduced to ordinary men, helpless, without any of the superpower that they had been given when they first came to this world. They actually felt the way they had before they came here. They had been drunk on power for so long, they forgot what it truly meant to be weak and helpless. That was when a dark realization washed over them. Sure, they had been stabbed, they had taken some woundings before, but there was always healing magic just in them, capable of helping them through any situation. But now, for the first time in their life, well, the first time since they got here, they were truly helpless. Death was truly at their front door. It all was real. They felt every excruciating moment. They could still feel where they had been wounded, where they had been stabbed, lying there in their own blood. For some of them, their hearts started to race rapidly. The idea of death had never been upon them until now, and now that it was, there was no way of escaping it. Some began to cry, some began begging and pleading to go home. They wanted this to end. They didn't want to be here. Of course they didn't. Now that the game was no longer suited for them, now that they were no longer the head honchos in charge, now that they no longer had the protection of the cardinal weapons, they were exposed. To some degree, Steve truly felt sorry for them. In the end, even if he didn't like their attitudes, they didn't deserve this. They were never meant to be here. All of this responsibility thrusted upon young men who had no qualms of understanding right from wrong to such a degree, who truly did not understand the situation they had been placed in. To them, this was nothing more but a game, a dream, a fantasy that they thought they'd wake up from one day, only to realize that the fantasy, the dream, had turned into a nightmare they might not live through to see the tomorrow. Steve would leave them in the care of his friends while he battled against Zemo. As the Pope and the other members, his mages, all concentrated mana into the weapon. It was the only way to keep it stabilized. After all, by using such a weapon, he was going against the very taboo of forcing power that was not meant to be used in such a way. Of course, the king was all too aware of this. He used the mana to refurbish his strength, allowing him to fight on par with Steve. For Steve, he finally got a chance to meet someone who was a worthy adversary. The king was skilled in the way of the sword and of the spear, and was masterful with the bow. If he had ever been chosen to be a cardinal hero in his prime, he definitely would have had the capabilities to do it. But Steve wasn't one to back down, as now for the first time, he had been in a fight where he truly had to go all out and cut loose himself. The two of them trading back strikes against one another, acting masterfully on the battlefield. Steve would set traps with his various shields, attempting to disarm Zemo, only for Zemo to counter once more and merely pierce him in the heart. They were moving with such ferocity that it became almost a blur to everyone else. Even Pope Balmus was impressed. The devil of the shield, living up to his name, a cockroach that clings to life. However, he cannot overcome the righteousness of God, for he is with us on this day. We will cleanse the kingdom of these false heroes. King Zemo, he will be the one that will lead us to salvation. Now, my brothers and sisters, lend him your power. Lend him your power so that he may strike down the devil of the shield with the righteousness of God at his side. He will be our salvation from the waves. We will turn to him. He will be the one to guide us through this darkness into the divine light. All of the mages chanted in unison as Pope Balmus focused his attentions on creating the barrier known as the Cathedral Sanctuary, a domain that would trap the two combatants inside. Half of their forces were focused on keeping the barrier in place, the other half giving power to the weapon. The king was able to transform from bow to spear to sword with ease, getting close enough with the sword before backing away, shooting multiple strikes with arrows, creating a diversion to move in just long enough to strike behind with the spear once again. Steve, however, was able to respond to every attack that the king could throw, as the two of them continued to fight, going back and forth. Raphtalia and the others watching over the now former heroes who had been stripped of their statuses, as they got a chance to watch for the first time the truth of everything that had happened finally dawning on them. Steve, Captain America, he hadn't wronged them. He hadn't betrayed them. He was the same Captain America he had always been. And now they got to see the living legend up close and personal, fighting to save all of their lives. Steve knew he would need more power, and he knew he'd have to tap into the Rage Shield, the power that lied dormant within him, as he once again found himself in the dark spaces of his mind, once again standing before the Man of Flames, the mirror image of himself. It looks like the old man's got you in a bind, huh? It seems that way. I'm gonna need more power to take him down. He's not who you need to focus on. You're really gonna have to take out the Pope. The Pope. He's the one that's channeling this sanctuary. He's leading his masses to lend power to that weapon. Taking down the king is the least of your issues. If you really want victory, you're going to have to stop the Pope, destroy the sanctuary, and all the power that goes with it. Then the king will be yours to defeat. If that's the power you want, I can give it to you. Steve began to see past images all playing in his mind, remembering every insult, every slight, every time the king wronged him. The man that's responsible for your torture lies before you. So what are you going to do? You're going to be a good guy and play the hero? Or are you going to do what needs to be done? Don't try and lie to me. I am you. I'm all the rage, the hatred, and the anger that you keep bottled up inside. We know what we've done. We've had to do some unspeakable things, some things that didn't let us sleep so well at night, but we did it so people could be free, so that our friends and loved ones could be free. I don't think I have to remind you what happens if you lose this fight, do I? The king will spare no expense. He'll kill the other 3 heroes for whatever it's worth. Who knows what he'll do to Raphtalia? Philo? Poor Aki? He's a good little soldier, but he won't be strong enough to stand up to him. They'll all die. Are you going to let that happen? Are you going to let him take everything away from us? Are you that weak? Are you that pathetic? You didn't come this far just to get knocked down now, Steve. You're not that little boy in the alleyway, that scrawny runt who couldn't do anything. We lost the doctor. We lost Bucky. We lost Peggy. We've lost everything once. We're not going to let that happen again, are we? The power of rage came over Steve in that moment. His eyes glowing a crimson red. His shield set ablaze as he howled out, the dark armor forming around him. No. He won't take everything from me. Not again! Steve called on the power of the rage shield as he was beginning to give into all of the power. For the king, he felt like this was his opening. He was drowning in his own despair. That was good. He'd lose focus. He'd make a mistake. And when he did, that's when he'd take him out. However, there was also another voice. Another flash of memories. Steve seeing firsthand all of the times that he had been saved from despair. All the good he had done. It was easy to give into vengeance, to give into one's own hatred. Anyone could do it. But he was supposed to be the one that rose above all of that. The one that rose above the hate. He had to be more. He knew he had to be. He felt the vestiges of Raphtalia, Philo, Melty, Aki, all of them around him. All the friends he had made along the way. Everyone who still believed in him despite all the setbacks he took. And then finally he saw her. The woman that told him he could be more. He thought back to that time. That time when he found out Bucky had been taken by enemy forces. The general didn't want to go back for him, and Steve was prepared to walk all the way behind enemy lines to save his friend, despite everyone telling him otherwise. He remembered when she asked if he wanted to be more. He remembered asking if she truly believed that he could be more, that he was destined to do more than just be some show monkey. He remembered her having confidence. And that confidence is what spurred him to do what he did, to be the hero he knew he could be. Steve managed to gain control over himself. And help came from an unlikely of sources. As the bellowing of ice magic was being used, the Pope finding himself restrained, unable to channel power to the weapon that the king was using. It was the opening that Steve needed, and from the queen no less. Steve would use blood sacrifice, channeling the power of the earth dragon that swallowed up the Pope and killed him in an instant. At a great cost to his strength, it was a price well paid, as the power being channeled to the great weapon became unstable, and the gemstones, unable to be controlled any longer, would explode. The king was left with no great weapon to use in his hand, surrounded by the queen's army, the mages being restrained and their powers sealed. As the cathedral would break open, Steve fell to the ground stained with his own blood as he clung to life. Raphtalia and the others trying their best to revive him. The king could see now that all he held was a dull sword, a sword that was useless. In anger, he looked to the fallen shield hero. It's not over. It's not. It doesn't matter. I can strike you down right here and now. The devil of the shield, I will do away with you. The old man raced towards Steve with deceptive speed. Even if the weapon was useless at that point, it was still a weapon. And with the downed shield hero, he had his head in his sights. One swift motion, he could behead the shield hero. He could have his vengeance before anyone else had a chance to react. Before anyone even had a chance to stop him. A wall of ice formed between he and the shield hero as he was restrained by the ice that formed around him. In an instant, the queen stood before the masked figure, her eyes solemn, as if they were filled with nothing but heartbreak and despair. Miller, you promised me. You promised me you would never put that mask on again. Why? Was your promise to me too much to keep? Was it too much for you to let go? Even for me? For our family? I cannot. I know what it meant when I put this mask back on. I knew what I would be getting myself into. You knew the pain you would cause me, and you chose to do it anyway. Did vengeance mean that much more to you? More than me? Why couldn't you let go? Because it was too late for me. I'm sorry. But the man you loved long ago, he died. And this is all that remains. This concludes The Rising of the Shield Hero, The Man Out of Time. What if Captain America was the Shield Hero? Season 1, Part 7. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. If you haven't, make sure you check out yesterday's afternoon upload for The Hunger Games Secret Empire, What If Katniss Everdeen Was Hawkeye, Season 1, Part 1. But anyway, stay tuned tomorrow morning as we'll continue with What If Captain America Was the Shield Hero, Season 1, Part 8. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.